I'll admit that the hardest division I had to look at, analyze, and make predictions for was the NFC West because I feel like, at least to some degree, I could make a reasonable argument for each of the four teams in this division either finishing last or winning the thing. So there you go. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about the four teams in this division. Like, it took me a bit to really think through this one, but I think I've gotten a stack ranking that I can get behind, kind of, I guess. And I'm going to start here by talking about the Seattle Seahawks, where 2024 marked the dawn of a new era in the organization's history. Pete Carroll was gone, so one of the last links to the Legion of Boom era out the door after so many years. The Mike McDonald era officially began. And, good news for the Seahawks. Their defense was improved last season. 11th in points allowed, 14th in total yards allowed. And I would say in general, it was a pretty good year. Certainly didn't go as well as they might have liked, right? They ended up finishing 10-7, but they were behind the Rams for the NFC West title. They missed the playoffs. And when you look back at why a team misses the playoffs, sometimes you'll look at a late season loss and say that's the reason. And sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Like they were playing a team that was just as good or better. You would have liked to win, but there's usually other losses mixed in particular losses to teams you had no business losing to, really bad teams. And to me, the damaging loss for the Seahawks in 2024 was to the Giants in Week 5. The Giants stunk, right? There's a reason they ended up with the third overall pick in the draft. If everything else stays the same, which is a big assumption, but for the sake of argument, let's say so, and they beat the Giants, they're 11-6, they're division champs, they got a home playoff game. It's that simple. So when you say like, hey, it's one game, yeah, that's kind of true, but at the same point in time, those bad losses can jump up and bite you in the balls when you least want them to or expect. And now, as we got into the offseason, the Seahawks made a big change. Gone is Geno Smith. He was traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for a third-round pick. And in was Sam Darnold, signed to a 3-year contract in free agency. And this is an interesting one, right? Because, Geno has put together a few good seasons for this Seahawks team. But whether they just felt like they had kind of reached their peak or their ceiling with him or wanted to go younger at the position, who knows? They got rid of him, and they went with Sam Darnold, and Geno's off with the Raiders playing under Pete Carroll. Sam Darnold certainly had a really good year, a bounce-back kind of year in 2024, kind of season where you say, hey, that's some of the stuff you thought he might be when he was taken third overall in 2018 out of USC. Problem was, late in the year, he started to regress a little bit, and he was really, really bad in the playoffs. So, was this really an upgrade or did they just get younger? Young is great, but young ain't everything. You know what I mean? What else happened? They signed Cooper Kupp and they released Tyler Lockett. They traded away DK Metcalf to the Steelers. They signed DeMarcus Lawrence. So it's really interesting. You sit there and you trade away DK Metcalf because maybe you don't want to pay him or whatever. But then you sign Cooper Kupp, an older guy, obviously really good too, but more injury prone, like release Tyler Lockett. So now your top two receivers are going to be Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Interesting spin of it, interesting approach here in my opinion for the Seahawks. That's for sure. When you look at the NFL draft and how they did, Gray Zabel's going to lock down that left guard spot, and I think he'll hold on to that for a long time as long as they'll let him have it and he can produce. I don't know that Nick Emenwari is going to start this season at either safety spot, but I would assume he's going to be a future starter down the road. Sounds like Torrey Horton's had a pretty good camp, has a chance to lock down that wide receiver 3 spot. But when I look at this draft class, admittedly, initially, it's like, okay, Gray Zabel's going to be a long-term starter. I project that Emenwari is going to be, and maybe Horton will be a contributor, but not a ton coming out of this draft class, right? So not a ton of help coming. In terms of the biggest strengths and weaknesses for this team, or question marks, I'll start with the strengths. I look at that secondary. That's a pretty good unit. They've invested quite a bit in. You've got Cooper Kupp and JSN in that receiving core. That's not bad for sure, and especially if Cooper Kupp's healthy. Like, I would take, this might be an unpopular opinion, but at their best and healthy, Cooper Kupp greater than DK Metcalf. I would take Cooper Kupp. But the if he's healthy, is a bit of a motherfucker there, right? And then you look at their defensive front. I think they've got some really good talent there. Especially when you think about Leonard Williams kind of being the anchor there. Jerron Reed is there still. That's a pretty good defensive front for Mike McDonald. Plenty of question marks here, though. I start with the running game. Like, we always kind of presume that they've got Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet and that they love to run the ball and they're really good at it. Well, they might love to run the ball, but they're not exactly great at it. Really inefficient in that aspect, which you really wouldn't want to see with two former second-round picks manning the backfield. And it's kind of one of those things we talk sometimes about quarterbacks, right? If you got two quarterbacks, you really don't have a quarterback. When you have two running backs that are similar in a number of ways, you really have zero running backs. And that's the reality. While they drafted Greg Zabel to add to their offensive line, I still think their offensive line, him and Charles Cross are there, sure, but I still think it is a potential source of weakness for this team. And then I think a question mark here is Sam Darnold. Like, yeah, he had a really good 2024 statistically, right? But towards the end of the year when it was on the line, like, he was not very good at all. He was bad. He looked like New York Jets version of Sam Darnold, which, believe me, nobody wants a part of, right? And now you bring him into the fold, he's going to have to learn a new system. He doesn't have a Justin Jefferson to throw to. He doesn't have a Kevin O'Connell calling plays and scheming the game plan for him. Like, how is this going to go? It's my question. And as I look at their schedule here, some notable matchups and stretches throughout the year. Week 1, hosting San Francisco. If you're the Seahawks, you want to win this one. You want to start off the season with a win, especially since it's against the 49ers. You want to let them know that for you, last season was no fluke, and you'll be in the mix again next year, and you're hoping that the 49ers won't be. Then you look at weeks 4 and 5. You've got a road game against the Cardinals and a home game against the Buccaneers. Like, these are the types of teams that could be in the playoff mix in 2025. So you got to find a way to be able to beat those teams. At least beat one of them at a minimum. Weeks 9 through 11, similar type of story there, right? You've got the Commanders on the road, and then you're talking about they're a potential contender. You got the Cardinals at home, and then you got the Rams on the road. That's a stretch of schedule right there. Again, like, let's just say for argument's sake, you beat in Arizona. Are you going to beat Washington or are you going to beat the Rams in that little stretch right there? You probably got to beat one of them. And then you look at week 13, Sam Darnold and the Seahawks hosting the Minnesota Vikings, so a chance for him to have a revenge game. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I look at this Seahawks team, and I feel like they downgraded at quarterback overall, going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. They traded away DK Metcalf and released Tyler Lockett. And yeah, they brought in a Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp's had injury history, and I think they have less depth overall in their receiving core. Their defense is good, but not special. And yeah, you signed a DeMarcus Lawrence, but how many games did he play last year? Like I said, I think this division could be close, but when I look at the 4 teams right now, I think the weakest team of the 4, the team that I would feel the least confident in having a chance to win this division, even though they did win 10 games last year, is the Seattle Seahawks. And that's why I'm picking them to bring up the rear in the NFC West and probably finish like 7-10.